Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. As you can probably tell, today we're going to talk about every single book that I've read so far this year, everything from January to the end of June. It's only like 35 books. It's not as much as I would have liked it to be, but I haven't been doing monthly wrap-ups. A part of me does want to do monthly wrap-ups, but sometimes I do like a lot of vlogs where I talk about all these books in depth, and just doing a monthly wrap-up would just like be redundant, I feel. So I haven't really been wanting to one, but if you haven't watched those vlogs, this is perfect because I will just quickly run through everything I've read so far. I'm not gonna go too much into detail, so yeah, let's just quickly go through all the books I've read by month. I don't know how long this will take. I'm gonna try to speed through, but also gonna give you like quick thoughts about them, but not super in-depth. So the first book I read in January was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I don't feel like I have to go too deep into like what this is about. We all know. I gave this book 4 stars. Part of me wanted to acknowledge the impact that this has made in a lot of books that I've read, whether they are straight up romances or like have like enemies to lovers, annoyances to lovers type elements that are taken from Pride and Prejudice. A lot of books are straight up just like reimagining the retelling of Pride and Prejudice, so I wanted to kind of give it its flowers that way. But I also did actually enjoy the story. I enjoyed the banter. I liked the wittiness of it, and it did take me a little bit to get into the writing. It's my first classic in quite some time. Afterward, I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. It's a horror novel about a young woman who is obsessed with slashers, like specifically the subgenre of horror slashers, but she's also incredibly convinced that there is a slasher event incoming in the small town that she lives in. And yeah, I love this book. It made me very emotional. I give it 4 stars, and the main character is someone that still sticks like to me. Like I still vividly like feel her, if that makes sense. After that, I read Trolled. This is the 3rd book in the Legacy of Magic series by Lindsay Broker. This is a urban paranormal fantasy, which I love urban paranormals like in general. This one's about a half dwarf, half human woman who's trying to figure out what really happened to her mother after she was presumed dead. Maybe that's not the case. This is a sequel series. Typically I wouldn't recommend reading sequel series before you read the original series it's taken from, but I did, and it's mostly fine. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I really like the main character, and the romance in this one was good. After that, I read Twisted Sorcery by Kira Adler. This is another urban paranormal fantasy, more urban, kind of like mafia elements, but this one's also very sapphic. Also a little more trigger warnings than this one. I thought this was fun. Writing seems very promising. The story wasn't executed the best. We follow a vampire who has gone into like some tough times, is contemplating becoming a sex worker, and she meets a witch who kind of helps her out getting out of that particular problem. So yeah. And then I read Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. This is the 2nd book in the Witchland series, which I do really enjoy, and this one did take me by surprise. I gave it 4.5 stars. I wasn't expecting great things with this one because I read some kind of mixed reviews, and the actual summary of this particular entry wasn't intriguing to me, but I did really enjoy this one. I had a good time. This is a lot of political drama, which interesting like witch magic system. I recommend if you're looking for a YA political fantasy. And then I read the 2nd volume of Skip Beat. This is a omnibus of the first 3 volumes, but I only read the 2nd one. This is one of my favorite shoujo mangas. This shoujo is about a young woman who has been spurned by her best friend slash like secret crush, and in order to get revenge, she decides to become like the most popular and most famous like female Japanese idol like in the industry, and it's very silly, a lot of hijinks. I really enjoy it. My manga ratings aren't the best. I don't quite have a good rating system for them right now, but in general I feel like a 4.5 for the series as far as I've read from it. So yeah, this was also a reread. City of Lies by Victoria Thompson. This is the only DNF I have so far this year. I don't typically write down DNFs in my journal, but I got far enough into this one to understand like why I really don't like it. Most of the times when I DNF a book, it's more so I'm not in the mood for it, as opposed to like I don't like this, I will never continue. That's how I feel about this one. I don't care about this book. I have no motivations to find out what really happens. I can kind of guess what's gonna happen. It's about a woman who's like a con artist, and she gets involved in some more drama. I don't know. I really didn't like the writing. It was very surface level, not good. Pacing was weird. the story was going in weird places too quickly, and I would assume that this is from like a first time author, but it's not. I don't give ratings for DNFs, but it's just not good. I don't recommend. And the last book I read for January was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is a mystery thriller about a woman who gets invited to a wedding on a kind of not deserted island, but a very secluded island off of Ireland. And is it Ireland? I think it's Ireland. Someone dies. There's a lot of flashbacks, flash forwards, so we don't know who's quite dead. I did not like this. I thought it was pretty mid and very forgettable. So that is it for January. Moving on to February, I think I only read 5 things. The first thing I read in February was Gear Breakers by Zoe Hana Mikuta. This is the first book in a duology. It is YA sci-fi sapphic about a group of rebels who are trying to like take down this empire that uses these giant like mechs, like Pacific Rim type mechs, to like have their authority on people. So it's like a rebellion type story. In theory, I liked what this book was about, but I thought the execution was pretty weak. I gave it like 2.5 stars. And then I read Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendara Blake. I gave this one 3 stars. This book is about a boy who sees ghosts, hunts ghosts, or he kind of gives them their like final resting place, and he is investigating the death of this one particular ghost, Anna, and it's a very violent, very unique death that he hasn't really experienced before. I give this 3 stars. It's good if you go into it expecting kind of like a monster of the week episode of like Buffy or Supernatural, but it's like it's just okay. So 3 stars. After that, I read Rosewater by Tay Thompson. This is the first book in a like sci-fi series that's very odd, has really interesting like elements. I did not like some of like the women and sexual scenes in this book. It made me not necessarily uncomfortable, it was just like incredibly like distasteful in my opinion. I do acknowledge that the author purposely writes the male main character to be like incredibly sexist, but I feel like that's like giving that character too much of a rope, you know what I mean? Like, okay, like I'll give you room to be like a problematic character because he's like written with that intention, but just some scenes were just like too much for me. A lot of cool stuff though, like alien bubbles placed in the middle, like in different parts of the world, really cool elements, just not for me. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I was being generous. I stand by 3.5. After that, I read Felix Ever After, which is a YA queer love story, contemporary. I gave it 4.5 stars. I absolutely adored this one. This book is about a trans boy named Felix who is still kind of trying to kind of discover himself. It's a very like coming of age type story. He's experiencing, you know, like first crushes and love, transphobia, things like that. So I really enjoyed this one. I highly recommend it if you're looking for like a queer story with trans characters. After that, I reread Bloodchild and Other Stories by Octavia E. Butler. This is one of my favorite short story collections of all time. If you're looking for speculative short stories, really good on the subjects of like gender, sex, sexuality, race, a lot of these things coming together. Really cool concepts in this one as well. I've read this one like I've read some stories multiple times. I've read the book through twice now, and I gave it 4 stars. There's some things that didn't resonate with me as much as they did before. Generally, all the stories are good. Some are great, and some are just okay. There's maybe like 1 or 2 that I'm like, it's not the best. And then I read Tested, which is the 4th book in the Legacy of Magic series by Lindsay Broker. Again, part of that same series I mentioned earlier, the dwarf woman who's going through her family history, discovering what happened to her mom, that kind of thing. Gave this one 3 stars. The romance wasn't hitting as well as it did in book 3. Now we're getting into March. The first thing I read in March was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a fairly popular adult contemporary sapphic romance about Delilah, who is going back to her small hometown to be a part of her stepsister's wedding. A lot of family trauma, bonding, rebuilding relationships, that kind of thing. There's also a romance. I give this 4 stars and I still stand by it, but like it doesn't hit as well looking back on it. At least for me it doesn't, but I think 4 stars is a good rating for it. After that, I read A Deal with the Elf King. This is one of those like romanticises that was highly like really hyped up, at least during COVID. This is by Elise Kova, who I've loved before her YA stuff. Her adult stuff is like okay. This is 3.5 stars for me. It's about a human who is taken to become the human queen for an elf king, and there's like a curse. Romantic-y stuff. It's okay. 3.5 stars, whatever. After that, I read a really good, this is also highly recommended for me, The Companion by E.E. Ottoman. This is a very cute novella, romance, historical fiction about three characters, they're all trans, and they're all kind of coming together in this one like private home for themselves. Our main character is hired to be just a companion, like someone to be a companion for. This romance is so sweet and so whimsy. It almost reads like fantasy, but it's not. Highly recommend if you're looking for like a trans romance. I loved it. 4 stars. Looking back on it, it could be higher though. After that, I read The Hate List by Jennifer Brown. I gave this 4.5 stars. I absolutely love this. This is not well received, I think, because of the subject matter. This is about a young woman who is dealing with the aftermath of a school shooting that her boyfriend committed. Obviously, a lot of trigger warnings for this content. It's a lot of grief, a lot of working through emotions and guilt and anger and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have the best reviews, because I think there's some misunderstanding about the author's intentions with this book, but I really enjoyed it. And then I read Sanctuary with Kings by Catherine Moon. This is the 3rd book in, I forgot what the series is called, but it's like a monster romance, spicy romance. This is one of the more spicier series that I've ever read. This is the 3rd book in a series. It's not great in my opinion. I gave it 2.5 stars. This is very plot heavy, which is fine, but then the author did use a lot of like smut and spice that seemed useless. If you only want spice, this would be good, but then there's like a lot of plot working as well, so it's kind of it's like a weird cancels each other out. I didn't really like it that much. I would only read the 1st book, which is The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. You can read the 2nd book, but I'd only recommend really reading the 1st one to get your fill. That was it for March. Let's move on into April. I'm really speeding through these. The first thing I read in April was Last Night at the Telegraph Club. I love this. It's kind of strange that I'm loving a lot of these YA books. This is a YA historical fiction sapphic story about a young girl who is Asian American, and she falls in love with another girl, and she kind of has this coming of age moment in like a queer sapphic or lesbian club. Again, a beautiful coming of age queer story. I gave it 5 stars. Really good. Really good. This is one of the best of the year so far. So yeah. After that, I read Sight Witch by Susan Dennard. This is book 2.5 in the Witchland series. This is more of like an expanding of the world. So if you really are enjoying the series up until this point, then definitely read this, because it adds so much like world building and like history and stuff that wouldn't naturally fit into the story, the main storyline, because there's a lot of info dumping. But I feel like info dumping in like a little novella like this is completely fine to kind of pad the world and give the readers background information. So I liked it for that purpose, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Girl from Widow Hills by Megan Miranda. This is probably one of my least favorite Megan Miranda books. I haven't had the best outing with her since her 1st book. This is about a girl who was the center of this big missing child event. She was like in a forest for like 3 days, and then she was found, and there was this big like media event around it, and she's kind of tried to distance herself from that past, and then like a body shows up. It's like, okay, I wasn't really attached to any of these characters. The story was like pretty mid. I understood the twist pretty early on, like I knew what was gonna happen, so I gave it 3 stars, a generous 3 stars, because I barely remember anything that happened here. So and then the last book I read in April was Storm Curse by Patricia Briggs. I think this is the 11th or 10th book in the Mercy Thompson series, which I love. I've talked about Mercy Thompson on this channel like so many times. Urban paranormal fantasy about a coyote shifter who gets involved in a lot of vampire, witch, werewolf, human drama. This particular series starts off with werewolves and fae coming out to the public about like their existence, so it causes a lot of like political problems and stuff like that. So this one was pretty good in terms of like the conflict and the threat, but this series is more like monster of the week. So if you're looking for something like that, I highly recommend the series, because I love Mercy. I think she's a great main character. I wrote down 3 stars, but looking back on it, it was actually pretty good, so maybe like 3.5 into 4-star category. Moving on to May, the first book I read was The Maid by Nita Prose. This is about a maid who stumbles on a crime scene in the hotel that she works at. I thought this was fun and exciting in the moment. Looking back on it now, I'd probably give it like 3.5 stars. There are some characterization problems that a lot of people have pointed out, so look into that, especially when it pertains to representation for autistic characters. But this is fairly like cutesy, I guess, if you're looking for like a whodunit, like light kind of mystery. And then I read Iron Widow by Shirin J. Zhao. I gave this 4 stars. The series takes place in a world where women are sacrificed by these pilots to help power these giant mechs, again like Pacific Rim type stuff. Women are essentially thrown away in the society. I really like this one. I thought a lot of the themes and the way the author went about showcasing these themes was fairly good. The writing isn't super strong, but it's okay. And there was, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but I was really I was so surprised at the end. There's also a poly relationship here, which is not super common for a YA book. This is YA sci-fi futuristic, so I really like this. I'm eagerly awaiting the second book. I know there are some problems with the publishers. And then I read Book of Shadows, the first book in the Sweep series by Kate Tiernan. This is very much like CW core vibes. I give this one 3 stars, not because I didn't enjoy it. I actually had a really fun time reading this, and I like sped through the first book, but it's that book that, as much as you love it, you know it's not exactly like peak literature. It's about a girl who joins a coven because this new boy in town invites her, and it causes a lot of problems. It's very like CW problems though, like long lost relatives, boyfriend drama, best friend drama. Like if you like the drama that you see on the CW, those type shows, kind of soapy, this series is pretty much that. And I'm actually currently reading the 3rd book. So, and then I read probably one of the worst books I've read this year. This is You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. I have a rant about this in the vlog where I read this book. I really hated this. I gave this 1.5 stars because 1 star is specifically reserved for books that I don't think anyone should read, because no one should get enjoyment from. Borderline problematic. There's nothing super problematic or anything about this one. I just really hated it, so that's why I give it that extra 0.5. But the twists and everything, not good. It uses one of my least favorite tools, I guess, to employ a twist. I don't want to go into detail and spoil anything for y'all, but I do spoil it in the vlog that I read this in. This is about a woman who goes to like a random podunk town in like Wisconsin and rents out an Airbnb, and she immediately has a hots for the guy who like runs the Airbnb, but like he's kind of sus and she thinks he might have done something bad. I hate it. I hate this. I hate this so much. It's so bad. Now that was everything in May. Let's move on to June. The first book I read was Smoke Bin. This is book number 12 in the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I've already talked about this series before. I love the series. I gave this particular one 4 stars. This one had a lot of drama, like soapy drama. I love soapy drama. If you didn't know, anything with like family, like relationship friend problems, things like that, I adore it. And there's of course like a monster of the week here too that was really interesting and cool. And then after that I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. I really didn't like this. I gave this 2.5 stars generously. This is a very like mid, boring, like not great contemporary, lightly urban fantasy. It's about a woman who finds an ad on Craigslist for like a roommate situation, and she really needs a place to stay, and she thinks that her roommate may be a vampire. Like he's like really odd, that kind of thing. It's like not great. I talked about it like on my TikTok, and I was like, you know what, like I understand that this is supposed to be like lighthearted and fun, but you could at least like make me care about the characters, like give them some depth. 2.5 stars, pretty boring. Like you're not missing out by not reading this. It's okay. Maybe you'll love it, but I certainly did not. And then I reread The Diviners by Luba Bray. This is one of my favorite books of all time. This is a YA historical mystery, thriller, horror, and we follow a cast of characters who are diviners, and this particular one follows like a wannabe socialite teen girl who gets involved in this mystery where people are being killed in very like occultish ways. A really cool story. I love this as a like someone who like loves history. This is a reread. Like this is my 2nd or 3rd time reading this book. 5 stars. I love this series so much, or at least I love this first book. I haven't even finished the series, but I love this first book, so yeah. And then I read The Fervor by Alma Katsu. This is a historical horror as well, about a woman and her daughter who get sent to an internment camp during World War II. She is Japanese, her daughter is Japanese, half white. Obviously touches on the things that happened in World War II, specifically revolving around Japanese Americans, but there's also something going on, some mysterious illness. I think the author wrote this during like the COVID era. I like the themes. I liked the story. I do feel like things wrapped up a little too quickly, which is why I gave it 4 stars. And then I read The Coven. Back to this book. This is a bind up of the first 3 books. I read the second book, and again, CW drama, like fun, silly, like teen YA witch stuff. There's a lot of Wiccan stuff here, which I don't know if the Wiccan representation is like particularly good or anything, but the author seems to really like the subject. In general, it's like a positive response to the Wiccan culture, spirituality, I guess, and I think it's fun. I actually gave this one 3.5 stars, looking at my notes, so maybe it got better. Actually, you know what? It's because there's a lot more drama in this one. That's why I gave it 3.5 stars. And the last book I read in the month of June, and the last book to wrap up this video, is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Wait, I think I forgot something. I totally forgot 2 books to talk about. I will talk about them after this one. Okay, Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is a like cool urban take on like vampires and stuff. The world that the author created was really interesting. I did give this like 3 stars because this is my least favorite of this author. The story wasn't particularly like engaging. On paper it seems really cool, but I couldn't connect with this particular story. I'm not sure the order in which she wrote these books, because I think this one got reprinted, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of her earlier works. It's not as engaging, even though the subject matter is really cool. It was okay, and I didn't particularly feel strongly about the ending. It kind of felt a little lackluster as well. So I totally forgot to mention 2 books in the middle of May. I'm so sorry. That was The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That's why I had like a light bulb moment. I was like, I know I've read something else from this author. This is a really cool reimagining, retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau. I really liked the themes of this one, how the author like approached them when it came to like colonization and that kind of thing. I gave it 4 stars. This particular book made me really think about how the author does romance in very like unromantic situations, unassuming places where romance can bloom. I also read Magic Slays by Ilona Andrews. I think this is the 5th book in the Kate Daniels series, which is another urban paranormal fantasy that I really enjoy. This one's not as episodic monster of the week as like the Mercy Thompson one. This one is a fairly like connected arc. This one I absolutely fell in love with from the first book. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I don't exactly remember why. The story tends to blend in my head, like in my memory. That is the last book officially. I totally skipped 2. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, that is everything I've read so far in the year. I might do like a mid-year freakout tag. I don't remember the questions for that particular video, but I will look back into it and maybe do a video for that. That is everything that I wanted to talk about. Again, reminder, I do talk about a lot of these in vlogs, so if you're looking for in-depth thoughts, you can go find them like on the search bar in my channel. I do actually list every book that I talk about in each video, so you should be able to just like type the name of the book and it'll come out, because I put it like in the description of all my videos. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what some of the books that you've read this year so far. I would like to hear anything you have to say down below. I will also link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.